Welcome back to this week's episode of Expats and Expat Wannabes. Today's focus is going to be mostly on condos / apartments. I'm going to use those words interchangeably. On the upcoming edition, the weekend edition of Expats and Expat Wannabes, I'm going to focus solely on that first trip, but only on the first leg of it, which will be Cebu. My strongest suggestion, and I'll give you a teaser at the end, so stay tuned for that. Before you leave your host country or your native country, get onto Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace. I know a lot of you don't have it. It's an essential tool in the Philippines. A couple of other apps I'd like you to download: WhatsApp and Signal. Lots of people use those for communicating, texting, phoning, etc., video calls. But Marketplace. The reason you need Marketplace is almost everything for sale, for rent, etc., comes out of Facebook Marketplace. Even my buddy John, who's renting out the condos that we're subletting, he does all through Marketplace. Very little is word of mouth, and there's no other resources out there. Even for real estate, if you're wanting to buy land or buy a house with land, it's all Facebook Marketplace. It's not easy, okay? There's no central realestate.ca as we have in Canada. So you're going to find some variations in rental costs, etc., and that's okay. But again, the reason I want you to focus on the Cebu area to begin with and the Angeles area to begin with is the number of expats in close proximity that you can start gaining a few friends and start learning off of them what it's like to live there. Eventually, you might want to do what we're doing, which is get more rural, find another expat area, but something where you're going to need a car or a bike to go back and forth to visit. And it may be a little bit less Western, but in my opinion, hopefully Western close by. I will do a future, try those rubber lips again. I will do a future video with my buddy John, who did a full immersion into the Philippine neighborhood, and he's no slouch. He's not a social butterfly either, but he couldn't handle it. So we'll give you a teaser on that, but that will be coming up after we get back. So the rent's there. You can pay anything from Western prices and over. When there's short-term demand for rental, and most of these places want 1 year, then the rates can be pretty high. Even if you commit to 1 year, a lot of them won't budge on their prices, especially on the higher end stuff. On the lower end stuff, it's all fixed. There's no negotiating there at all. Now, my caution with all of this stuff is try to get back into those locations at various times of the day. Nighttime is not the same as daytime. It changes dramatically. And again, I think what I'll do is I'll link one of the videos at the end here on us walking out at night and going see the night lights. You get an idea of some of the noise, the dramatic change. So let's come back to furnished or unfurnished. That's up to you. That's a real wild card. For me, initially, it was totally furnished. And the reason was I wanted that big ass air conditioner. I wanted everything there. I did not want to have to think about it. And honestly, the initial thought was that once Lynn got her visa to Canada, we would not be returning to the Philippines that often. Now, I fell in love with the place, and we go back every year. Okay, we're there 6 months roughly, 6 months in Canada. So we love it, or I love it. Lynn would rather work, but you know, she likes to get back, spend a lot of time with the family. Okay, so furnished, like I said, you're going to pay Western or more, unless you're going to get into a neighborhood that's a little bit more Filipino, but some longer term expat life. And in those locations, then you can start to get the rents down. Now, in the condo that we sublet, those rents range from $12,000 to $15,000. that's fully furnished. That's now we're going to start ditching the TVs. Honestly, people, nobody uses the TVs, and you can't afford to put a smart TV in a rental outlet. Everybody's coming with computers and tablets and all of that type of stuff. But look to find out whether your subletter includes the internet, because we do in our building. No, sorry, it's a minor up cost, but everybody takes it because it is a minor up cost relative to everything else. Now, a quick little sidebar again. I strongly suggest do not worry about getting a what they call load that does talk and text. Get one of those SIM cards that goes in your phone that uses cellular data, but they call it Wi-Fi, and put that into your phone. That's my strongest suggestion, and that's why I suggest downloading those apps called Signal and WhatsApp. And you can also use Facebook for your personal friends to do calling on Messenger. Air conditioning. That's going to be another issue with both furnished and unfurnished. It will depend on that particular unit over time as to whether it's got an air conditioning unit or not. The air conditioning units are for an okay one that fits in the hole. It's generally always in the wall. And if there is no hole and they offer to put one in the wall for free, ask them to install it as low as they can. 2-3 feet off the floor is perfect. You don't want to be heating all that hot air up there, honestly. Cold air falls. I do not understand. If you think about most hotels, those split air conditioners that do heating as well in a lot of hotels, they're all down low. They're below the window. Heat your feet, heat your lower body, heat the bed. In the Philippines, you want to just cool the bed elevation. You don't want to heat all that ceiling air. Let the heat go up. Anyway, that'll cost you about $10,000. Now, again, we're not talking so much about condos here, but we are talking about what it's going to be like for you to set yourself up so you can live there. So we touched on the air conditioning, we touched on the Wi-Fi, we touched on the alternate way of getting Wi-Fi, which is through your cell phone. Then you can hotspot to your tablets and your computers. And the last I checked, it was $9.99 through Smart, and it gave you roughly a gigabyte per day. I think it worked out to 850 megabytes per day, which is a fair amount. You will need a VPN if you have a streaming service in your host country, your native country, because if, as an example, it's Netflix, it won't work in the Philippines. It will try to get you to sign up for Netflix Philippines. If you're able to connect in with somebody, or you send me a note, I can let you know of people who are doing IPTV services, Internet Protocol TV services. And with those, it is again a streaming service, but it's out of the Philippines and you can use it everywhere. Not a bad price. It's a little bit more expensive than, say, Netflix in Canada or the US or Europe, but it's a good service. It's a good service. What else can I touch on here? Let's go back to the very beginning. The very beginning is you're going to hit there, you're going to start your networking, and you're going to find these neighborhoods. I would suggest that you start by going to, say, an SM Mall or an Ayala Mall. In Angeles, it's Marquee Mall, it's still Ayala. And from those locations, then walk to these various rental places. While you're walking them, you can get an idea of what the trike service is like. Most of the trikes seem to be coming down to neighborhood-only usage. Now, Angeles in itself is very densely populated as far as all of these rental units go. And this is where you can run into a problem when you're seeking out these places. And this is where Marketplace comes in. You have to watch Marketplace closely and check to see what other rentals are in there. Always ask the key question. How many can we get in a room? Now, the reason I say that is that many buildings will allow up to 6 in a studio apartment. The building we're in, they limit it to 4 in a studio. That means that there is constant comings and goings. 4 guys or 4 gals in a studio, probably all on different shifts, maybe even hot bunking in 2 beds, 2 on night shift, 2 on day shift, that type of thing. So be aware of that, because then that means that the hallway noise is going to get really, really high. It can get really, really high. Hence why I suggest that in your bag you carry that small speaker that has good quality sound, and then you can just Bluetooth to it to have some white noise in the background. So again, you're going to network with these expats that you meet in that initial trip and walk those distances. Seek out where the trikes are, because on a rainy day you'll want a trike to go home, but in the meantime you need your exercise, right? So you might as well walk it. Get used to what the wet markets offer. So again, from your location, how far away is the wet market? You don't want to have to spend a cab cost to do that. Most of your wet markets are based on trikes. The trikes are all up really early. That's why, because they have lots of business to get to the wet markets. So walking is very handy to get to the wet market. Now, by the time you're finished your shopping, all of those other bigger services, like more repeating on the Jeeps, more repeating on the cabs, you can get your way home. If you start taking a cab, ask if they will give you their name. A lot of them will. You can text them directly and ask them if they can pick you up. Okay? We try to let them know the day before, and then they will either make it or they will contact one of their friends, and they will make sure that one of the cabs gets over there for you. Handy service, because trying to dial a phone number that's on the side of those cabs is almost impossible. I think they have one person working there, because so much of the cab is actually just hail on the street, but you can wait a long time in the hot sun waiting for a cab. Oh, what else? I'm doing this off the cuff because I find it more comfortable. Networking, finding locations, banging around. I think we kind of got it covered. Marketplace is going to be your key before you even go, because you could even have your own list. You might not be of the right frame of mind to meet people when you first get there. You got that jet lag going on, right? So let's talk about this coming weekend's edition. I'm going to give you a teaser on that. It's going to be exactly the same video as last week, except I'm going to focus solely on Cebu. And why am I going to focus solely on Cebu? Because there is 3 other opportunities with high expats there. 2 of them are easy access back to Cebu, and I'll even include maybe a 4th, which would be the fringe of Cebu, which there is a fair number of expats out the Liloan, Mandawi area. I'm going to focus on Cebu for another 2 reasons. Bohol doesn't really have a central city with lots of expats, but it's a very small island. You can get your way around and meet up with your friends that way. Again, a fair number of expats. Negros, a little bit more involved. It's probably the most involved island to get back to Cebu if you have ongoing clinical need or hospitalization. I'm going to get all these videos, I'm going to repeat this same thing. A friend of ours had a baby, had to get into the hospital. This is a country where they revere their children quite highly. And it took 12 to 14 hours, I don't remember which number it was exactly, to get that baby a bed. Yowzers. That shows you how busy these hospitals are, the general hospitals. So that's why I focus heavily on the Angeles area. They have a number of Western level hospitals there, and Cebu has 2 Western level hospitals there that come highly recommended. Lastly, there's the San Remo area where we're living. Lots of expats again. In easy proximity, it has a public beach. There are a lot of walk-on beaches there, but they're not all formal public beaches. In other words, owned by the city. It does have a public barbecue. I think it's every night. There might be one night a week where they take off, and a great way to meet expats there. We've moved there to build, so we're not doing that full immersion as mentioned earlier. I will get a video with John and talk about that full immersion into Philippine culture. Well, the wind is kicking up a little bit. So again, this weekend's video will focus on the currencies, staying within those budgets. What kind of budget should you work for? I will again give you what I said is the thresholds, but again, it won't be as big as this last week. So if you want to know how I came up with the thresholds, look at last week's video. The upcoming videos are going to be of Angeles and where we live and the neighborhood and some walking around. No talk about hoochie coochie in the Angeles area. Sorry. Somewhere along the way we might have a conversation. Maybe in 2 weeks I'll have a small talk about what it's like to live in Angeles and finding a condo in Angeles, Clark. Okay, that's a wrap for this week, guys. Have a great one. Bye now.